morning, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Action Items, produced by Let's Talk Supply Chain, sponsored and brought to you by NewGen Architects, your partner in technology-driven supply chain and business transformation. So I am super excited about today's show. I think that when a topic comes up, the law of attraction, the entire week before the show brings all of the conversations in my day-to-day life around that topic. So I have had so many conversations this week about program and project management, and we have a heavy hitter on the show with us today, Mr. Andre Kirkland, program manager currently at Twitter, but his background is business and digital transformation in the supply chain space, Nike, Anheuser-Busch, training and technology at NASA. I mean, big heavy hitter. So excited to have him on the show, and we can bring him up, Nicole. Let's show everyone his pretty face.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, DC.
Good morning. Where are you these days, Mr. Digital Nomad? Wait. So in the last 6 weeks, I've talked to you. You were in Egypt, then you were in Toronto, then you were in a garage that was not your house. You were somewhere else.
Yes.
You've been all over.
It's been a busy summer, that's for sure. So based out of San Francisco, but was like you just mentioned, on vacation in Egypt when we spoke one time. Went to Florida to visit family at another point in time. The garage. But currently I'm in Toronto. We have an office up here, so just hanging out. So yeah.
And we also had another guest, Jordan. Shout out to Jordan, our Excel data guru. He was starting his journey at some point. I think I saw him post on LinkedIn. He had just gotten his vaccinations for his cat. He's headed to Portugal. So I love it. I love that this is, continuing. We all talk about the future of work and how that basically arrived with the pandemic. So I love to see it. Good morning from Panama, Tennessee, India, Canada. Everyone's from all over today. Speaking of traveling everywhere. Share a little bit about yourself, Andre, if you think it's relevant for the audience. Definitely don't want to go into talking head of my life, but if it's relevant, share. And then Nicole will drop a very interesting article, Jacksonville, Florida, another different place. Nicole will drop the link for a really cool article with CX Network that Andre did about his time at Anheuser-Busch and doing optimization, cost savings, et cetera, and business transformation related around that. So definitely check that out. And then, Andre, I'll let you say a few words. I've just been talking.
That's all good. I appreciate it. So I'm not sure on the whole big hitter thing. I think you might be overselling it just a tad bit, maybe a lot.
Yeah.
But
take the compliment.
I appreciate it. But no, so for the audience, program lead at Twitter. I've been at Twitter for about 2 years now. I lead our platform health operations and our program in that capacity. So what does that mean just in terms of partnering with our developers, making sure our platform is as healthy as possible? Prior to that, I was at Anheuser-Busch, as DC mentioned. My background is in supply chain and technology. And so was really the owner of our North American supply chain at Anheuser-Busch, and then transitioned from Nike to AB, or I'm sorry, transitioned to AB from Nike, where again I was in supply chain and process improvement. So that's really quick about me. Happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity, and we'll see what I can share for you all.
So there is one thing that I want to call out as we're talking about this and doing this introduction, and it's that you're not 60 years old. You haven't been doing this for decades and decades and decades. And I like that because I think there are so many people who often equate value that a person can bring and whether or not they're ready to do something based on how many years they've been in an industry or in a role. And you were doing heavy hitting, in your, not to like tell everyone how old you are, but like in your 20s, 20s going into early 30s. So you don't have to, especially in supply chain. I go into introductions sometimes, and shout out to Sherry Heiner, supply chain queen. She's talked about this before also, and this is something that I think that we kind of maybe somewhat bonded over, is that years of experience. You walk into these meetings, and first of all, people are like, I hate when people introduce teams and they're like, yeah, we have 100 years of experience between like the five of us. Like, what does that even mean?
He's like, what does that mean?
Okay.
So what? Like, okay.
or like, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years. If you've been doing it for 20 years, as like, yes, I've been in the game for 20 years. If you're wearing it as a badge of honor, because maybe you've had the same year 20 times. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that you've been keeping up to speed with changes in the market, with any new consumer behavior, et cetera, et cetera. You could have started doing this in 1995, and you've been trying to do the same thing since 1995, and it's now 2022. So I just love how you've had the opportunity, which a lot of people don't get, especially as a person of color, to really show up and be able to own some fun, purpose-driven initiatives, despite not having, at the time, 25 years of experience. So I definitely want to call that out, to, make sure that is emphasized to the audience. And this is recorded, so it goes down into the internets forever. That apparently maybe it will end up on TikTok. Completely on all the tangents this morning, kind of irrelevant, but I just read a post, and I left the tab open, because what I do, I keep tabs open because that means that I'm eventually going to go back and read it. I left the tab open. There's a 4-minute video of actually, I'm going to Adrian Shears on LinkedIn posted 40% of Gen Zers prefer TikTok to Google for search. And if someone is searching how to be a badass in supply chain, maybe you should come up. Get your TikTok video content ready. Okay. Topic. We're 7 minutes in. We have not talked about the topic. So program management. Yeah. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because especially in the supply chain world right now, I've been for sure seeing a lot of RFPs out about digital transformation, IT consulting, process improvement. It's coming under different names, but it's all essentially the same thing. Yep. And that is implementation of new systems that require new processes that at some point probably require also an organizational assessment. And when you're talking about digital transformation, and especially on the supply chain side, because we know how many different functional departments and areas fall under supply chain, from marketing to manufacturing, sales, logistics, distribution, demand plan, supply plan, et cetera, et cetera. You can go into a world of, we have to implement 10 different point solutions. We have to make sure all of those are integrated. We have to, in a perfect world, understand what it looks like going forward, total cost of ownership. How do we make sure that this project or program continues to bring value? So when it comes down to, these initiatives, they are multi-year, you know what I mean? And what that requires is some sort of program management, because you can't expect in 2022, August of 2022, to know what's going to be happening in June of 2023, let alone in June of 2024, 2025. And with these being multi-year initiatives, just because of the time that it takes, you have to be able to remain in an agile, flexible mindset, to where you're moving with whatever the world is giving you, this box of chocolates, whatever the world is giving you. And I always look at my program manager or program management as being the glue, or maybe the liaison between senior leadership setting that strategy, and then the project teams are actually implementing, to making sure that if we need to change this execution of digital transformation or move something up, move something back based off of strategic priorities, that's where I see the program manager coming in. So I think that there is definitely an opportunity right now to kind of align, at least for the sake of our conversation, of what we mean by program management and where program management and project management kind of split. So I'll let you define that.
Yeah, so from a difference between program management and project management, I mean, they do have some overlapping similarities and capabilities, right? But when you really break it down in terms of what the difference is, you can think of one as more strategic versus one as more tactical, right? When you look at kind of, as you mentioned, the liaison with senior leadership and executive sponsors on what we need to do as a business to grow the business, what are those initiatives? What are those strategies? How do we actually kind of go about planning to make this happen, right? And then what are the set projects, we'll say, that will help drive that vision to completion, right? And that's where the program manager sits in those conversations. And then partnering with the project managers of these discrete projects to then make sure that we're on track to deliver the vision that we set. Like you mentioned, it's a multi-year vision, right? So when we sit down and establish our 3-year plan, what does that look like? What are the different projects? Who's managing those projects? Who's driving those to completion? Right, the whole racy deal. Who's responsible and accountable for driving these projects to completion? And that's again the program manager to monitor that, establish that, and make sure that we are on track to then communicate back up to executive leadership that yes, we're not on track, or we need some help here, or these are the roadblocks.
Cool.
So that's for me. That's just based on my experience and kind of my, we'll say, understanding of what has been successful as it relates to program management versus project management.
Right. Quick question. When do you think, and I don't ask questions that I don't have an opinion on.
Okay.
when
I know.
when do you think you need to have an internal program manager versus outsourcing and maybe bringing in someone as a contractor versus a full-time employee? And this is a question that I'm asking specifically because so many people in our audience are startup, practitioners, small and medium business owners. I mean, Twitter, Anheuser-Busch, Nike, let's be honest, these are like huge organizations. So I'm sure they're running so many projects and programs to where it does make sense to have probably several, if not several hundreds of program managers just globally running different programs. But as a startup or a small and medium business, where do you know whether or not you need to bring in someone internally to manage, and or let's not bring in someone new, but we have someone who probably has the skill set, so we need to pull them off of whatever they're doing and repurpose them, versus I need a consultant who is going to run my programs for the next couple of years?
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into that decision or that discussion, as you might imagine. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, what are you looking for, right? Is this for a short-term kind of sprint type of engagement where, hey, I have this set of things I want to do. I don't know how to prioritize them. They shouldn't take that long based on my understanding of my business, right? So let me just hire someone externally and to help knock these out, right? Or I guess as a consultant. On the other flip side of the coin, you can say, hey, I can see this as we continue to grow the business as a continual need, right? So the question is, do I want to continue to outsource this work, or does it make sense for me to bring someone in-house to really understand our business, understand our initiatives, and help drive the evolution of our business in a program capacity, right? You can even do something as another point is, you can take the position of never jumping into the water with both feet, right? So if you wanted to really determine if you need a program manager, start out with a proof of concept, right? Let me hire someone externally first, um, as a consultant to see if this is actually a value add to my business as a short-term engagement, and then evaluate after that engagement said date ends, right? Or as you mentioned, maybe you have someone internally who might have the capability but just haven't put two and two together yet, or haven't made that step, and try it out for a period of 3 6 months, whatever the case may be, to see if that works. Again, kind of just taking that proof of concept from a technical or a product standpoint and applying it to an organization, right? So it's those are some of the things that come top of mind as it relates to making that evaluation and also determining what's best for your decision. But I think timeline and what exactly you're looking for from this specific role, as well as your business, turning your 3 year, like the 3YP or 5 year plan, then you can make that decision from there.
I like the idea of the proof of concept, especially thinking about, again, these startups and small businesses. A lot of times they don't have the in-house knowledge, experience, or capacity.
Hmm.
But I mean, obviously, I'm making a career out of evangelizing, digital supply chain and technology. So I do think that if you want to remain competitive in today's world, and like you said, continue to scale and grow, et cetera, if those are your goals, you have to
Hmm.
make sure that you always have a pulse on technology, process improvement, continuing to evaluate what you've done in the past, what you're going to be doing in the future, how your systems and processes need to change in order to support whatever strategic objectives that you have. So I really like the idea of having a consultant or someone kind of come in and lay the foundation and
Hmm.
then transitioning that over.
Hmm.
So my opinion, because I have an opinion before I ask the question.
Of course, of
my
course.
opinion my opinion is that, if you don't have the internal capacity
Hmm.
or experience to bring someone on, but with the idea that we're going to have to take this over. So
Hmm.
to be parallel pathing with making sure everything is documented. If you need someone to be shadowing, whoever this consultant is, or this team of consultants, depending on how large your organization it is and what you're trying to tackle, but there's always the place now for digital. You can call it software, you can call it tech, you can call it data, call it whatever you want to call it, but you need to be baking that into whatever your business strategy is going forward. You cannot overlook it. So 18 minutes in, first action item that we're going to talk about as it relates to program management is making sure you define the program. What does that mean?
Defining the program, similar to what we talked about earlier in terms of partnering with leaders in the organization to really establish the vision for the company or initiative, right? Or I'm sorry, the organization. What initiatives do we need to drive in order to see the vision come to life, right? That series of initiatives and projects, that is the program, right? Again, the strategy piece. Too often I think the strategy gets intermingled with the execution, and just because of the tangential nature of program and project management, whereas from a program, again, you aren't executing the projects. You might have some situations based on bandwidth, capacity, resource availability, etc., where you have to play that role and have to wear both hats. But ideally, the program itself is the series of projects that are going to drive a certain initiative, right? I'll tell you from my time at Anheuser-Busch, where we were focused on business transformation and digital transformation. It was a series of automation projects that we were going to monitor and execute and drive to completion to as a part of our supply chain transformation program, right? That in itself was the program versus the, hey, there's this automation, there's this automation project, another one, RPA, chat, whatever the case may be, right? That is the we'll say the foundation in and of itself of the program.
Yeah,
And it,
I think that that's spot on because there's a question. How would you scope out the work for a program manager? Would it be scoped to a specific project or a specific area of the business? And I think based off of your answer, it's the latter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Again, because the project itself is different from the program. you can think of 5 projects that might each have a different project manager, or maybe a single project manager. Those are different. Those are collectively make up the program or make up a subset of the program, right? We can talk about supply chain, and I think the example was middle mile transportation. Well, we can have a program or a series of projects focused on first mile, middle mile, last mile. Those collectively come up to the let's say end-to-end supply chain transformation or trucking, right? Or transportation transformation. So
We
that's
can call it what we want to call
you gotta call it what you want to call it, right?
it.
But that's those series of projects are in and of themselves the projects that comprise the program.
Right. And this isn't an action item, but I'm going to throw it in there based off of this question and kind of where the conversation is going. But identifying in an owner of the program and a a program manager, whoever the accountable person is going to be, racy,
Mhm.
which you mentioned. We also talked about, bringing someone in versus internally. Either way, I think to close that loop, wrap it in a pretty bow, is that you have to have someone accountable. You
Yep.
you can't just expect, you can't come in and say, yeah, we're going to do supply chain transformation, and then we're going to have a TMS implementation, we're going to have an ERP change, we're going to have a demand planning implementation. And you have all of these different projects, and there's no program manager that is making sure that all of these projects align. So making
Yeah.
sure that you have an accountable person. And if you're looking to scope that out, and I'm thinking from a skill set and experience perspective, it's more than to I don't know if it's Karakari, the question about scoping out the work for a program manager. You also want to make sure that this person understands how to connect the execution to the strategy, and not just, hey, are we on time? Are we on budget? Like that for me is very tactical, but you need your program manager to be able to look at that, but also the 30,000-foot view, and to be able to see everything that's going on.
Right.
Which
DC,
is,
can I? Go ahead.
oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No.
I was gonna say, can I add it on a point right there? Because
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head, because that 30,000-foot view, another reason why the program and that accountability is so important is because, and you see it all the time in organizations, large, medium, or small, where folks are working in silos, right? There might be a project over here that is very similar to a project over here. Nobody is understanding that you're effectively doing the exact same thing, right? At a program manager standpoint, you can evaluate, because you should have different views of the business. You should understand, what's happening over here with this leader and this stakeholder, right? Because you are working with executives, right? So with the program standpoint, you can then consolidate and establish the foundation of the benchmark that, hey, these two are doing the exact same thing. How do we prioritize or consolidate into one single project or streamline our efforts? And that's why that 30,000-foot view is so important.
Right. Now, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, because I obviously have not been doing this for 25 years. But is program management new?
That's a great question. I
I don't know if
haven't.
you, I don't know if you know, because, and I say that because from a when I did my master's, when I was studying industrial engineering, engineering management, I had a project management course.
Yeah.
And that course, if you wanted to, you could then take the PMP, test and get a
Mhm.
certification as a PMP. But there was a lot around project management from an
Mhm.
academic perspective. And we know that sometimes academics lags a little bit what is actually happening in the real world.
Right.
So, and maybe maybe someone in the audience knows it. um, but is program management new now that there is so much so much emphasis on digital and software, and these different technology implementations?
Yeah.
And maybe before it was called continuous improvement, and maybe people who were, continuous improvement managers and directors, maybe the program management fell under them. And like, are we just repackaging something that already exists?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think I'm gonna have to go to TikTok to find more information on that to answer your question. But I can
Yeah,
tell
but boom, go.
jokes, yeah, jokes. Misinformation is real. So misinformation is real. So
Well, to be clear, in the study, they were saying how people who do their searches for TikTok don't really care as much about misinformation. They
got it.
recognize that it's out there, but they don't necessarily care about it. Okay.
Great, awesome. Okay, so then, that said, I think these the program management, at least from what I've seen, where management role, the job title did not exist. There was a PMO, or a project management
Yes,
office,
your project
right?
management office, yeah.
And
So
so those responsibilities, they were carried out, but under a different name and in a different, we'll say, different process, right? There was,
mhm,
because you had a whole office versus a single program or a series of program managers for these projects. So I am, while I'm still relatively young in my career, the program role might be relatively new to me, but it may have existed for 10, 20 years. I don't know. But I do know of a PMO and how projects are managed through that.
well, we do have some comments coming in. Nothing wrong with repackaging as long as it meets the needs of the user base.
Mhm.
And yes, it's all a repackage, nothing new under the sun. But yes, no harm in making sure that if we need to repackage it to put it back to the top
Mhm.
of mind for leaders, and they want to feel like, yes, this is a new innovative thing that we're doing. Cool, it is
Shout
new.
out to marketing.
Yes, shout out to marketing. Marketing is real for your external customers as well as your internal
Yes,
users.
absolutely.
Even when it comes to program and project management, we have a new TMS coming. We want you to use it. We want you to know what it actually does and how it works and how your life might change.
Yeah.
Internal marketing, change management. Okay, cool. Action item number 2, which I don't remember, prioritization. Yes,
Mm,
prioritize within your program. And I think this is just kind of making sure that we articulate, communicate with the audience a little bit of what we've already talked about, in that these are multi-year initiatives. Things could change.
mhm.
You have to remain flexible. You have to remain agile as whatever in your business changes. I mean, think about everyone who had sort of a digital transformation starting in like 2019 or January of 2020. You have to be able to transition and change. So, what? How do you prioritize? I mean, I feel like prioritization can get very tricky. I mean, are you prioritizing on value add, on cost, on who screams the loudest, from like
Mhm.
complaints and pains from the user base, or who has the most clout from like an executive sponsor perspective, who wants this to happen? How do you prioritize?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I mean you're exactly right. You can slice it many different ways, all right, based on cost, based on it's maybe intangible value, just several different factors. So me personally, what I ask, and when someone comes to me for support and wants to put work on the plate, it's okay. So what's the business justification, right? If you can explain why this is important to the business and why the business should care about this, then what that does for me is allows me to map that to the higher level strategic initiatives of the business, right? Because that's defines the prioritization of any project or program, right? What is the business trying to do? What is the vision of the business, and what's important to the business, right? Once you have those defined, then you can start mapping out specific projects to carry out that vision. So if the business justification doesn't even tie to one of these, then it's automatically a no, or hey, go back and do some more work, right? Because the business that our leaders have said this is not important and this is what we should be focusing on. So that's first things first. The second thing is, now once you have that first initial question answered, now things start to get a little bit more dicey, because as you mentioned, you could look at cost, you can look at customer experience, you can look at kind of profit or kind of from a commercial lens. Um, there's so many ways to define priority that it's really tied to your business and what's important to you. I think some of the tricks that I've used in the past are it's coming from my Six Sigma background is, hey, what's the level of effort versus impact, right? If you look at that matrix in terms of, hey, is it high impact or low impact? Is it low effort or high effort, right? And depending on where the particular project falls in that regard, that's a tool that you can use to define to prioritize, right? Another tool is maybe a failure modes and effect analysis in terms of, hey, if we don't do this, then what happens? What's the risk to the business, right? And that's another prioritization point, risk, right? Maybe this could be legal risk, financial risk, risk to the customer. So many ways you can define that. So it's understanding what points are important to your business, and how does that tie to the overall goal of your business. Maybe I'm okay with spending X amount of dollars, spending a premium to get a certain project done because it's going to be so impactful for my customers or my employees, right? So many different questions.
Yeah, I just told everyone to take notes. And I say take notes because you also charge people for this information.
Oh, of course.
You have your Six Sigma course, and I really I like that you brought that up because one of the things that I've always thought was very interesting about what you do just as a professional is taking that engineering and kind of traditionally applied to manufacturing
Mhm.
concepts like Six Sigma, like Lean, what you just talked about. These aren't normally things that when you're talking to program managers or project managers that you hear about.
Yeah.
It's like burn down charts, burn up charts. You know what I mean?
Yes.
and, and
Yes.
and while that's great, I mean, I love the low impact, low effort, high impact, high effort. You do a matrix, you see where things land,
Hmm.
and that helps you prioritize. There's so many different concepts that are not being applied right now, and like I said, I hope everyone was taking notes because those are free nuggets that Andre normally charges for. So, um,
Facts.
but also if you want more details about that,
There you go.
then those courses are available, and I am potentially incorrectly marketing for you. I don't know if those courses are.
Again, second time we said shout out to marketing. There you go.
Yes. But yes, I mean, on risk, on impact, on your goals, and one thing that you did say about you know making sure that this project is aligning with the goals of the program, because as the program manager we know that the program is aligning with the goals of the strategy.
Definitely.
But as we talked about, having someone that's accountable for running the program and kind of being that liaison, you need to make sure that that person also has decision making power, is respected, because and they're diplomatic, because you might get an SVP that is wants to drive through some initiative or some project, and the program manager has to be able to say, I don't care if you're the SVP, I don't care if you're a junior analyst, we're not doing this project. And, in a nice way, but it does not align with the business goals right
Hmm.
now.
Yep.
So, Mr. Mrs. SVP, you can go back and rework your business case and try to pitch this again, or I hate to tell you, you're just going to have to wait. And the program manager has to feel comfortable and being able to communicate with those senior level resources and team members and leaders to be able to say, also even to C suite,
Hmm.
don't forget, don't let the shiny object derail you. I know you just went to this
Hmm.
conference, I know you talked to this this one person, this sales person, but remember, I'm going to bring back out our strategic goals for you,
Yes.
and this is what we're going to be focusing on. So let's
Yes.
table this. I'm not going to tell you no, I'm going to tell you not now. But you have to be able to have a program manager that really understands how to kind of do that diplomacy and that emotional intelligence, I feel like, starts to come in, the people aspect of it.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to get a 10-minute warning soon, from from Nicole. She's already like
Okay.
putting up next show, September. Wrap it up.
Yeah, that's when the
um,
music starts playing at the Grammys. Just like, hey,
yeah.
wrap start to wrap it up.
Your thank you speech is over.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got one more action item, the last action item, and that's a continuous improvement. So, defining the program. When you define the program, and we've talked about this in another show of, also defining projects. You understand the end time, and I don't say the end time, but what ending looks like, because sometimes August 12th, it's over. Like, I don't care. You have to go live. It's the end of it. Or, okay, we're done once this project achieves this certain goal. So anyway, you identify what the end looks like, but you also have to identify what the continuous improvement looks like, and that helps you identifying that from the beginning. Also goes into your total cost of ownership of whatever program or project you're implementing. Because going back to the TMS example, we implemented a TMS, and now it's live. That's not the end. It should not be the end for forever. It's the end of that initial project. But applying continuous improvement techniques, what does that look like? And from a planning perspective, how do you put that into planning and kind of try to foresee what that's going to look like, is the first side of the question. And the second side of the question is actual execution for your continuous improvement.
Mhm. So that's a great point because, especially with digital transformation and business transformation from a tech standpoint, um, systems are always evolving, new features are always added, new products are coming onto market, and processes or customer demands are always changing, which define new needs for your business, right? So how do we plan for that? Um, you might have a project that's relevant today that may need to be revamped next year, right? This initial project, as a particular scope of our program, let's knock that out for the first year. Understand that there's always going to be a continuous improvement element to the work that we do. So, what is our sustainability model, our support model? How do we make sure that this project is, or this program exists today and is irrelevant next week, next month, 2 years from now, right? Because as a business, we want to continue to grow. We want it to continue growing. Excuse me. So that roadmap of, hey, these are the series of projects today, right? We are looking from a three-year plan, right? This is what we forecast from either a product or a customer or demands standpoint. And then how do our projects, what's the next step, right? As a simple example, going back to how we prioritize within a program, maybe there's a project that it's high effort, high impact. High effort, we can relate that to cost, but we don't have the budget for that for the entire initiative. So then how can we piecemeal what we can get today based off of what we can currently allocate to this initiative, right? And then continue to build off of that as a means of continuous improvement because we can only get so far today.
Right.
That's a quick example. Um, Going on more the kind of the tactical side of continuous improvement to program management, what's the end-to-end process of maybe supply chain, right? When we talk about sourcing all the way to delivery of goods or product services to our customers, right? What transformation opportunities exist within that end-to-end map, and then where do we want to focus as it relates to what's important for the business, right? Maybe um, the north star, the driving goal for the business, highest priority is, hey, we need to deliver the the most premium customer experience possible, no matter the cost. I'm just throwing something outlandish out there, right? So maybe continuous improvement will be focused on the specific customer and their experience despite cost, right? Again, something outlandish. So it's how do you look at that end-to-end map, continuous improvement technique to tie back to the program that is defined by the organizational leadership.
Right. What what that makes me think of is, kind of going back to hiring someone internally, regardless of company size. Um, if it makes you feel better, don't call it program management, call it customer experience. Like and
Mm.
there, because you mentioned so many projects around customer experience, and realistically, you shouldn't be doing projects or programs that don't tie back to strategic objectives and goals. And your strategic objectives and goals should not tie back to, or they should always tie back to the voice of the customer also.
Mhm.
So you shouldn't be doing things because your competitors are doing it, unless your competitors are doing something that is supporting the customer.
Resonating with yeah, exactly.
But it should always be going back to the customer. So if you think about from a continuous improvement perspective, from a serving customers perspective, your program manager then falls into when they're not managing projects, because people might say, I don't need a program manager all the time. We're not going to have all these projects all the time. But your program manager is going to be able to be there and help you identify when you do need to kick off another project. And they're going to be there to monitor the previous projects that were implemented. And then when it's time to kick off new projects, then they're going to be the people to say, oh, we need to bring in project managers. You know what I mean? So I always like the idea of your program manager, or whatever role that is, whatever role or title you're giving them, they have program management skill set, as well as an understanding that there is going to be maintenance required. And I think that this might be, kind of new. Again, going back to, or maybe not, because it's just been repackaged, but maybe with so much focus on software and digital, it has changed a little bit the way that it looks, because like you said, the upgrades, the new features. I know that a lot of times people will choose a software based off of the product roadmap. So it's not doing something now. And that kind of goes back to exactly what you said, continuous improvement, dollars, investment, but maybe you really, really like this tool and it's missing, one or two features, but they have a product roadmap to put that in 6 months or 9 months.
Right.
Well, once that functionality is implemented, you of course don't have to go through an entire implementation of that tool again, but there is the marketing, the change management, the training of, okay, we're now going to flip this switch on this new functionality. Now that we can use this, how is it going to change? And what comes to my mind most of the time is that when there aren't features, the workaround is always, we'll keep doing it in Excel. So once you flip on the feature and you're not going to do it in Excel anymore, then there is the learning curve component of, okay, we have to do another mini project, continuous improvement, call it whatever you want to call it. But I feel like the software and the technology, emphasis in digital, and how so many things are cloud based. So you kind of just push the upgrade. You push this new feature, and it wasn't there yesterday, it is there today. What does it look like to now implement that? I think that having those concepts has really pushed this idea of continuous improvement even like further up the priority, because things do change so quickly, and you have to be able to keep up and make sure that people are reskilled, upskilled, et cetera, et cetera. 45-second countdown. Want to continue the conversation? Yes, I do. hello@nugentArchitects.com. Email us. A quick question, and we might go a couple seconds over. This is great. Thanks for the information. How does an ideal program team look? Is it just a program manager, analyst, process engineers? Oh, I mean, I think it depends on your business. It's a really quick answer. No one's program management office or team is going to look the same.
And I can speak to that from, again, whether it's NASA, Nike, AB, Twitter, it's all different.
All different.
All different, just based on the needs of your business.
Yep. All righty. So we answered that question, and 45 minutes. We're at the top. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Andre.
No problem.
See you
Thank
guys
you.
next
Take
month.
care.